What is up, guys? Media Master Menard here today, coming back at you with another video, and today we're gonna be going through my thoughts and review of the Netflix original Witcher TV series. And let me tell you guys right off the bat, I am a huge fan of the Witcher IP. I love The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. My plans in the future are to play the first and second game, but right now I am actually reading through all of the books. I'm on the fourth book right now, Time of Contempt, and I'm really enjoying it. I don't usually read books. I guess I'm listening to the audio book. I don't usually do stuff like that except for stuff like this that I really do enjoy. The Witcher 3 is quite literally my favorite game of all time, and I really do love this franchise. So when I heard that they were making a Netflix show of this, I was kind of weary, as you usually are with video game IPs that are kind of transferring into other forms of entertainment. And to my surprise, the closer and closer this series got to release, the more I kind of was buying into the trailers. And honestly, by release day, I was extremely hyped for this series and kind of thought they had something good going for it. So today let's get into what I actually thought about this series after watching it. So the first thing that we need to talk about when we review this series is kind of what the source material was. And the first two books of the Witcher novel series, The Last Wish and The Sword of Destiny, are what's being adapted in this season of the show. And those books are actually collections of short stories and kind of these cool little adventures that Geralt and company are going on, which actually makes it particularly challenging to adapt into a TV show format. And kind of the way they went about this was kind of doing a monster of the week, so to speak, type of thing for the most part, while kind of having separate different timelines and slowly weaving them together as the season progresses. This admittedly can be confusing, and honestly it was a little confusing to me even though I had read the books, because the first episode they show you kind of the fall of Sintra, and then that's really the last thing that happens in this season's timeline. Then you go zoom back to a story that's going on with Geralt concurrently on the show, but actually is happening like 15 years before the fall of Sintra. And then additionally, the next episode, in episode 2, they start to show you the origins of Yennefer and where she became who she was. And when you are watching that, it's actually like 80 years before even Geralt's story. Yennefer is quite old, actually. So I thought it was kind of interesting the way they structured the timelines, and even though they did drop hints here and there throughout kind of the show as exposition, it was a little confusing even as a book reader. So I can't imagine what people who had kind of no background knowledge at all were thinking while all this was going on. I think by episode 4 though, they kind of dropped enough hints where you can kind of start to be oriented with the time, and the paths do start to converge and all the timelines come in with one another. So I didn't think it was actually too big of a deal, but it is one of the only complaints I have about this season of the show. But overall, if we're talking about the story in general, I do think the short stories were, for the most part, very well adapted. They were quite interesting and fun little tales and gripping within their own rights, and they don't really overstay their welcomes. Yes, I think some of them could have used a little more detail and fleshing out of the minor details, but then we were going to be approaching like hour-and-a-half episodes. I've heard some people suggest that maybe they got rid of some of the Ciri plotline in favor of kind of focusing more on the short stories and being a little more faithful to the short stories, but I think it was fine how it was, and I think they did a good job of putting them on the screen. And I do think the first episode in particular, they did a fantastic job of just pulling people in. I mean, just finding out why Geralt is the Butcher of Blaviken is going to be huge for a lot of people who played the game but didn't necessarily read the books, and so that story is really cool, and the fight scene in that episode is fantastic, but we'll get to that later. Back to kind of the story. So Geralt's stories are obviously the short stories. Where they started taking a little more liberties was with Yennefer's story and Ciri's story. Ciri in the books, I'm not going to go into spoilers for that, but Ciri in the books isn't really a thing until the second book, really, and she's kind of mentioned and she's there, and there's allusions to her throughout, and she's actually the focal point of, I think, 2 of the short stories, if I'm correct. And besides that, she's not really there, which was kind of hard to deal with, I understand, as they're adapting the TV show, because in the long haul, she is a pivotal character to the Witcher story, but she's really not that involved with the content they were covering here in season 1 of this show. But it would be weird if Ciri showed up just super important in the next season of the show. So I actually do appreciate how they kind of implemented Ciri's story into this season, and I think it gives her character a little more depth. The person who I really think they did an excellent job with was Yennefer of Vengerberg. And guys, they really fleshed out her character. Yes, they took some liberties and kind of made up some stuff and more backstory and kind of went more into the details of how she became a sorceress, but it was honestly fantastic. I loved seeing her at Aretuza, learning magic from Tessia DeVries. I think it's DeVries, Tessia DeVries. But it was just fantastic seeing all those people and sorceresses that you met from the book, seeing how she became a sorceress, and kind of seeing some of her tragic past, seeing how she met Istredd, and all of these really cool things and details that they fleshed out that weren't necessarily in the books. The only thing that kind of sucks about it is it makes you feel a little too sympathetic to Yennefer at times, because in the books, when you first are introduced to Yennefer, she's supposed to be this very difficult person who she isn't easy to deal with, and that's part of kind of the allure that she has with Geralt, and they do show that at times in this series, but I think it's hard for us as the viewer when we're shown her beginnings and her origins that we kind of have a little bit of distaste for her like we would in the books. So that was kind of the only thing that was kind of a byproduct of them fleshing out her story more. But I do think overall it was the right decision. One thing that a lot of people were worried about coming into this film was the acting / casting that was going on, and a lot of the decisions that were being made around that. And I can honestly say the first and foremost thing is Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia was absolutely fantastic. When I found out he was playing Geralt, I was, like most people, a little worried because he's Superman, not Geralt. But guys, he does a fantastic job. He was able to steal the show as Geralt and kind of calm everybody's doubts right away. The way he's able to do that scruffy low voice and kind of just the look he has, the nonchalantness a lot of the times is just perfect, and he really is Geralt. As far as some other members of the cast that I have comments on, Freya Allan as Ciri was kind of an interesting casting. I think she actually does a pretty good job, but to me, Ciri was kind of more of this, like, disobedient, maybe that's not the right word, like stubborn, very stubborn child, and I don't know if Freya really portrays that accurately, and I don't know if that's what she's being told to do. In the TV show, she seems more prim and proper, whereas she seemed always kind of like a tomboy in the books and the games to me. That's kind of the vibe I got. I think Anya Charlatra did a fantastic job as Yennefer. I wasn't ever really worried about her as Yennefer. I don't know why. Just from the previews, she just looked solid, and honestly, she gave a very solid performance all the way throughout, starting from kind of hunchback Yennefer all the way to beautiful, evolved Yennefer. One casting I thought was interesting was Fringilla Vigo. She was cast Mimi Nidweni. I don't know how to pronounce it, but she is a black actress, and I thought it was quite interesting because in the books and in the game they made a kind of concerted effort to convey the point that Fringilla and Yennefer looked alike, and I don't want to say anything about spoilers that come later, so I won't, but I just thought it was maybe interesting. But it seems like maybe they're kind of consolidating her and a couple other sorceresses and sorcerers, so it didn't bother me at all, to be honest, but I did think it was a little interesting at first. I thought Mayanna Buring was fantastic as Tessia. She did a really good job of kind of being the snooty sorceress professor, but she was also a very intriguing character at the same time. I really liked how they expanded her role. And one person I have to give a shout out to is Joey Beatty as Dandelion, Haskier, whatever you call him. They call him Hoskier in this version, which is the original name. The Bard. He is absolutely fantastic, and he is someone who did steal the show. He did such a good job of kind of being that whimsical, not necessarily full-on comic relief character, but a great job of lightening the mood, and he's just like he is in the books and the games. I really liked that. The only thing I'll say is I felt like they didn't show enough that him and Geralt truly are friends, and sometimes it made it feel like he was just an annoyance all the time. I wish they would have shown more moments of them truly being friends. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Toss a Coin to Your Witcher is literally such a good song, and it is so addicting, and it was such a cool part of this show. Cannot understate that. It literally is still stuck in my head from when I first watched it. It is just so catchy. It's unbelievably catchy, and I thought it was a really cool part of the show that deserved a little shout out. And the only other comment I have is that Anna Schaefer, who was Triss Marigold, I was a little worried actually at first when she wasn't kind of the stereotypical Triss Marigold looking person with the red hair, but I actually was kind of impressed with her performance, and I thought she kind of really was very good at being a subtle character, which is what Triss is in the books. She was a very subtle character who is important, but did a good job of not trying to steal the show and make it about her. So I actually think she did a great job of Triss and actually being what Triss is in the books. Overall, guys, it was just it was fantastic, and honestly exceeded my expectations on the acting side. They really took this seriously, and you can tell in the results. As far as like the CGI and battles and all of that stuff goes, I thought it was absolutely stunning and really exceeded my expectations for a Netflix show, guys. I mean, the fight scenes, particularly that first episode and the episode at the banquet, were absolutely fantastic, and what I liked was how smooth it was and pleasing to the eye while also being gritty and kind of grounded and not super fantastical and trying too hard to be epic. They did a really good job of keeping it grounded and smooth, and the way Garrett's pirouettes, as they call them in the book, looked, I really did like it and appreciated that. Also, the CGI was very good for kind of the budget they were working with. I mean, the couple times Geralt used Ard looked really cool. The other stuff with the sorceresses and their spells were fantastic, to be honest, and I really liked the aesthetic they were going for with this show and the magic and all of that fancy CGI stuff. I also thought the couple monsters they showed, I don't know if those were Neckers in the last episode or if they were necrophages. I think they were necrophages kind of feasting on the dead of the battlefield, and the Striga fight was so sick, and the CGI on that was fantastic, guys. I mean, they really put so much effort into this, and it's great to see that much love and care put into something like this and have it actually turn out great. And that's kind of where I want to end this review. I mean, overall, this series really exceeded my expectations for a video game IP, even though it's based off the books, but something that was most likely happened because of the popularity of a video game. I mean, that is just fantastic to see this kind of success, and it was the #1 kind of streaming show or anything on streaming for a while. It still might be at the time of this recording, I'm not sure, but stuff like that is just really promising, and the fact that next season is going to be based on traditional novels instead of the short stories, I'm really excited to see if they can leverage that to tell a more traditional story and focus more on character development and other stuff like that. I think that will be fantastic, and they won't have to kind of skip around and leave out some details and shave some of those details out. So I really am excited to see what they have in the future. And yes, they have already pre-approved season 2 before this one even came out, so obviously the people who were in charge of approving it liked what they saw. So that is just fantastic news, guys. So obviously you can tell I was really pleasantly surprised with the series, and I think people who have read the books or played the game, even if you've just played Witcher 3, are going to enjoy this show. And even if you haven't, I think watching this series could be very interesting. Now, don't expect Game of Thrones, because this show is trying to accomplish something different than Game of Thrones, which is what a lot of people and a lot of critics are seeming to miss. But I think it's a great fantasy show, and it's a good setting, and I think it's gonna be good for the next couple seasons. I don't know how many they're planning on making, but I'm very excited for the next one, and I do think everyone, if you have Netflix, should give this a shot. But I want to know what you guys think about The Witcher on Netflix, guys. Did you like it? Did you not like it? If you've read the books or played the game, did that change your opinion on the show, do you think? How do you think Henry Cavill did as Geralt of Rivia? Let me know the answer to all those questions down in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be bringing you guys more movies, TV, video game, and anime content. I'm going to leave a link to my Twitter down in the description below so you can find out when I post a new video. And until then, this is Master Menard, signing off.
Now look at the top, I'm going crazy, who wearing the crown? Scoodly bop, doodly bolly, doodly da.